Good afternoon, everyone, and warm welcome to today's webinar. Fighting from Exile, Diaspora Activism, Challenging Gender Apartheid in Afghanistan, hosted by ASDD and Politics4Her as part of the campaign to end gender apartheid in Afghanistan. My name is Shaharzad, and I am one of the campaign manager for the End Gender Apartheid in Afghanistan campaign, as well as the president of Associazione di Solidarità Donne per le Donne, ASDD. Our campaign aimed to raise global awareness, advocate for international condemnation, and push for legal recognition of the gender apartheid as crime against humanity. We work to expose human rights abuses in Afghanistan, promote advocacy through social media, and call on UN and other states to take decisive action. Let me briefly introduce the organization behind this important initiative. ASDD is a women and refugee-led association based in Italy. It's committed to advance gender equality for Afghanistani refugees. Our goal is amplify the voice of women in Afghanistan, ensuring their rights are protected no matter where they live. Politics4Her is a feminist NGO advocating for the inclusive participation of women and girls in politics, civil society, and decision-making process. It has been over 3 years since the resurgence of gender apartheid regime in Afghanistan, marked by extreme oppression. The Taliban have imposed ruthless decrees to erase women from public life and strip them from basic rights. One alarming measure is the promotion of virtue and prevention of vice law, which mandates that women cover their bodies and faces, labeling their voice as aura, something to be private. In response of this unfair law, women of Afghanistan have been bravely resisting and fighting against the gender apartheid, no matter where they are. Since 2021, many have had to leave their country and live in exile. But even in these tough situations, they remain dedicated to seeking justice for women of Afghanistan. Women inside in the country continue to take to streets to protest, while Afghanistani women in diaspora support this fight by using resources to raise the voice of their fellow Afghanistani women. They start different initiative and advocacy effort to bring attention to the struggle women face in Afghanistan. Today's webinar, Fighting from Exile, Diaspora Activism, Challenging Gender Apartheid in Afghanistan, is the second in a webinar series following the first webinar, Beyond the Border, Fighting Gender Apartheid in Afghanistan is a joint obligation. Our discussion aims not only to raise awareness, but to inspire concrete action that can lead to meaningful changes for Afghanistani women and girls, both within Afghanistan and across the world. And the agenda for today's webinar includes introduction of speakers. Speakers will deliver presentation on a specific topic, each lasting 15 minutes, the Q&A session, closing remarks, and call to action. And now I'm honored to introduce our esteemed speakers. Shaharzad Akbar is the Executive Director of Bakhtari and an Academic Fellow and Chatham House and visiting scholar at Oxford. She's a former chair of the Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission. Ambassador Manizha Bakhtari is Afghanistan representative to Austria. She previously served as Afghanistan ambassador to Nordic countries and chief of staff at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Farima Nawawi has a varied background in diplomacy, teaching, and human rights activism. She has worked as diplomat, teacher, and researcher for both government and non-government organizations. She writes about the justice, human rights, focusing on women issues, and advocating for equality and freedom. Before we begin with our first speaker, please make sure your microphone are muted. If you have any question, feel free to write in the chat box, and we will do our best to address them during the session. So let's begin with our first speaker, Shaharzad Akbar, who will discuss the fight for women's rights in Afghanistan, the role of Afghanistani NGOs like Rawadari, Diaspora Activists, and awareness-raising campaign like Iqra. The floor is yours, Shaharzad.
Thank you, Ms. Haidari, and thank you, colleagues, for organizing this event. I'm very, very honored to be sharing this panel with Ambassador Bakhtari and with Ms. Nawabi. I'll speak a little bit. I think we hear, although not enough, but we hear about the horrific restrictions and oppression by the Taliban in Afghanistan. We hear less about the ways in which women and human rights activists and civic leaders are defying these restrictions and fighting against them, both inside Afghanistan and outside. So when Taliban took over on 15 August 2021, the second day, 16th August 2021, you had women marching on the streets of Kabul. You had protesters, brave women who came to streets asking for the rights, for human rights for all, not just for human rights of women. And these protests continued for a while. And there were at the time a few independent media that were still operating in Kabul and tried to cover the protests. Initially, the journalists were beaten and tortured, and later protesters were attacked even in their homes. In a few months, Taliban actually forced themselves into the house of a female protester and detained her and her sisters in the middle of the night, and later denied the detention. But eventually it became public knowledge that they were detained by the Taliban, and much later they were released after being exposed to harassment and torture while in detention. So since their return to power, Taliban have, in addition to imposing this strict restrictions on lives of women and girls, but also individual rights and freedoms more generally, they have also initiated a very systematic campaign of repression to make sure that their tyranny does not face a strong civic resistance inside Afghanistan. They have several institutions that are most directly involved in these violations that could be potentially, held accountable. The key institution in our monitoring, we have seen that the Taliban's General Directorate of Intelligence is behind many of the arrests, torture, and intimidation of activists, protesters, education activists, university teachers who raise their voice in support of women and girls. The GDI has set up a system where they also monitor social media accounts. They create fake accounts and try to befriend people on social media or follow people on social media, and then use what people say in social media against them to threaten them or silence them or detain them. Once an activist or a protester or a journalist is detained, often they are forced to give confessions that is then used against them. There are times when when community leaders can intervene and release those who are detained, often after months of negotiation. But everyone who is released, their passports are taken away, and they're made to sign papers saying that they will not continue their activism anymore or not speak against the Taliban on any platform anymore. So there has been a very brutal campaign trying to suppress the civic space because Taliban are really scared of the power of people. They are scared of the collective power of women coming together and men coming together to defy their rules. Taliban's war on women is well known. I think we all hear about the edicts, but just to give you a sense of how it's being lived on the ground, we have documented a case where Taliban did not allow, this was before this latest so-called morality law, Taliban did not allow the dissemination of an ad on radio. This ad was about polio vaccination. and Taliban would not allow it to be broadcast because a woman was reading the ad. We have had instances where women who are sick have been dragged out of taxis for traveling without a mahram to the doctor, without a man accompanying them to the doctor. They have been harassed and beaten up, and the taxi driver has been beaten up and detained. So it's not just women, it's also trying to get shopkeepers have been harassed and detained for talking to women customers in their shops or allowing women to come into their shops to buy things. Women have been detained under allegations of bad hijab or having improper outfit and harassed and taken away. Often, at times, their families not knowing that they have been detained because they have been detained while shopping or out in the markets. The level of restrictions has really made life unbearable. Despite this, with every single restriction, then despite the suppression, women have continued to fight back inside the country. They have changed their tactics. You still see from time to time street protests in Kabul, although now fewer in number because of the brutal response they have gotten. But you see women coming together in their houses, recording messages, covering their face, recording messages, organizing protests where they cover their faces but sing or read their demands, continuing to defy Taliban's restrictions. We have also had examples of male activists, male education campaigners being detained because of their campaigning for girls' education or speaking up for girls' education, male university professors being detained for and harassed for supporting girls' education, their family members being harassed and prosecuted because someone campaigned for girls' education. So this is the levels of the environment, the difficult context under which Afghan women continue their struggle. And I think, and connected to this is, of course, the activism of Afghan organizations and diaspora, including NGOs that have been set up or have continued their work, documenting the human rights situation in Afghanistan. Rawadari is one of those organizations. The organization that my colleagues and I set up. We have published 9 public human rights reports. We have engaged with the UN Special Reporters. We have engaged with the International Criminal Court. We have advocated for advocacy in the UN Human Rights Council and in UN Security Council. And there are many other organizations and activists who are doing these things as well, organizing gatherings and working with parliaments. There was recently engagement with the European Parliament by a group of Afghan women. You all have heard about the recent summit that was held in Albania by Afghan women. So there's all forms of activism and defiance that's going on. There's a lot of collective effort, despite a very grim and difficult situation. I think we focus a lot on the restrictions, and as we should, and we should document them, and we do in Rawadari, but also there's the picture of resilience and resistance that the women have really gotten under Taliban's skin. And just a recent announcement on Wednesday of Germany, Netherlands, Canada, and Australia about a potential CEDAW case in the International Court of Justice is the latest step for accountability, and one of the demands of the Afghan human rights community now for over 2 years. That's now taking shape, and would like to see more countries joining that, particularly Muslim countries. Another form of activism that the Afghan organizations have been engaging at, because our access to people inside the country, we can't go door to door. You can't do any kind of human rights work inside Afghanistan publicly anymore. Even our group of documenters or data providers, their identities are completely hidden. They are anonymous and they often have other jobs. And so we have to take a lot of measures to keep them safe. But one way to reach Afghans is through media that are operational in Exile and through social media. So we have a partner of Rawadari in partnership with an organization called Musawir that focuses on children's literature. We started a campaign to mark the 1,000 days of girls being deprived of school, which was on June 14th. We hit this mark, this devastating mark, where it had been 1,000 days since girls had missed on school in Afghanistan, the only country in the world where this is happening. And we started a campaign called Iqra. Iqra is an Arabic word, it's from Quran, it means read. So we named our campaign Iqra to remind the Taliban about the importance of reading and knowledge in our culture and our context. And we gathered voices and testimonies of women from 34 provinces, young girls from 34 4 provinces, so between 11 to 18-year-olds, about how the education ban has impacted them. And they were all struggling with various forms of depression and mental health issues because of the ban, because their dreams had been shattered and their ambitions held back. But they were all asking for solidarity, for global solidarity. And that's where I'd like to end, really. You talked about the, a call to action. I think it's very important, and we do this. We are looking at various accountability mechanisms. We have even published a paper on different avenues to justice. We are looking at the different ways in which the states and the UN can hold Taliban to account, and we will continue that work, and that work is very important. And that's one area, including codifying gender apartheid, where we need solidarity and support. But we also, more than the states, we need citizens to stand with us. The governments want to look away. The governments want to move on. They are not they don't genuinely care about the rights of women and girls in Afghanistan or other parts of the world. And so it's very important, I think, for citizens to find ways to support the efforts of the Afghan human rights community and civil society in exile and inside Afghanistan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Documentation and human rights reporting, it's really one of the most important thing that we need. It's really in this situation, especially when media is censored in Afghanistan. And thank you so much for sharing your insight. And now I would like to invite Excellency Manizha Bakhtari to share her insight on amplifying Afghanistani women's voice, the role of the diaspora diplomats, international collaboration in shaping policy toward the Taliban.
Do you have my voice?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to speak with you today, and I'm very much pleased to share this panel with Madam Akbar and Madam Nawabi. And of course, I would like to thank the organizers of this event for convening us to discuss this very important and timely issue. So, let me first and foremost congratulate everyone on the very significant political and diplomatic achievement where countries like Canada, Australia, the Netherlands and Germany intend to hold the Taliban accountable for violating CEDAW through ICG proceedings. And I believe that this process is, although I know that this process is lengthy and may not on its own deliver justice to the women of Afghanistan, but still it marks an important step and a shift in global policy until today, as far as I'm concerned, other 25 countries also have joined this initiative, and I consider it very important and vital. Why? Because for the past 3.5 years, we received almost no attention on this issue. So to address this event, as you asked me to talk about this subject, I believe that first of all, we must first recognize the deeply challenging circumstances our women face under the Taliban rule and the shifting policies of the international community. Today, I will not focus on what is happening inside Afghanistan, as we are all painfully aware of it. Instead, I'll primarily focus on the international community's approach and policies towards the Taliban regime. And to fully address this subject, it's essential to analyze how the world has reacted to the Taliban's takeover. You know that the global political landscape has shaped both our diplomatic efforts and advocacy, and we are practicing within this landscape. And that's very unfortunate, but one of the reality on the ground that Afghanistan has always been in need of external influence and force. So that's why we need all this advocacy, and we need help. After the fall of Kabul, the world has largely turned away from Afghanistan, and allow me to elaborate on why the international community's lack of significant attention can be attributed to several factors. And here, actually, I have noted four factors. And the first one is, as I said, the shifting global priorities. The Ukraine war and the Russian invasion of Ukraine has drawn significant attention and resources from Western countries and international organizations. And that's actually leading to a diversion of focus away from Afghanistan. And Gaza war is another issue, and issues like the global energy crisis, climate change, and escalating tensions between the United States, China, and Russia further limit international community's attention. And there are so many other competing humanitarian crises around the world, like the famine in parts of Africa, or alongside conflicts in the Middle East. And also we shouldn't forget the COVID consequences. You know, COVID also impacted global resources and attention, and that actually take away the focus from other parts of the world. So anyway, now we find ourselves in a post-COVID world, and we need to deal with the consequences. And the second factor I want to emphasize on is fatigue and maybe despair, you know, lack of long-term success after 2 decades of international intervention and variance and aid. Many countries and the organizations are disappointed by the lack of lasting progress. You know, the dramatic fall of Afghanistan's government has left many questioning the effectiveness of their previous efforts. You know, many ask me how you could not survive for at least a week or a month. And, you know, after establishing an army with 350,000 members, how that would be possible. That's a big question around the diplomatic circles. And the third circle is the false narrative of change. You know, some countries were misled by a false narrative that the Taliban had changed, and these misleading narratives were lobbied and sold to several nations, and that of course, that leading to an easing for their stance towards the regime and like taking some actions. And the 4 factors I want to here elaborate is the ease of this engagement. You know, the international community finds it easier not to engage with Afghanistan because that avoids cost of sending troops, aid, or taking other active measures. And you know, several diplomats and leaders I have spoken with have told me, we were in your country for 20 years. We lost our children and we spent millions of dollars. And Afghanistan remains a conservative and corrupt country with at least little hope of significant change. And this actually, this sentiment has made many nations hesitant to re-engage. And given this 4 factors, the avenues for diplomatic or for diplomats in exile to act are indeed very limited. So now let me say a few words about Afghanistan's diplomatic circles. And within our diplomatic circle, the fragmentation and confusion after the government's collapse have created additional challenges. Some diplomats favored silence, arguing that diplomacy requires neutrality. And I remember when we had our second in-person meeting, I mean the Ambassadors' Council's meeting sometime in early 2023, I was attacked by a few that why I was attending the public events and why I was so direct and, as per them, frank and straightforward to the Taliban. And one even asked me, not to show in the media unless my presence in the council would affect everyone else, because they were thinking about some sort of agreement with the Taliban, or at least they were thinking like we are neutral and we may mediate between international communities and the Taliban. But anyway, that was also proved wrong. And at that session, I answered, I would attend with pride and I would repeatedly call the Taliban terrorists. Anyway, others were confused, or had to seek refugee status, and the result is that only a few of us continue to advocate actively for the rights of our women. And additionally, many diplomats who lost their status no longer have that access, that open access to international platforms that actually further limits their capacity to advocate. And regarding foreign diplomats, it's important to note that multiple policies exist toward the Taliban. And many ambassadors that I'm in contact with express disappointment and disagreement with their capital's official policy, but they rarely or they never voice this publicly. Diaspora diplomats like myself, if you call me that way, have a unique role. We can advocate on the global stage for our women. We can ensure their plight remains visible, and that and at least some concrete international action is taken. And international collaboration is very crucial in this effort. We must push for conditional policies that hold the Taliban accountable, ensuring that engagement are tied to improvements in women's rights. And just to be clear, by engagement, I do not mean recognition. I'm very firm about that. And that's why I believe a transformation in policy is on the horizon, as we see that. However, we must keep two things in mind. First, the issues in Afghanistan and the Taliban's presence go far beyond women's rights. That is one thing that we should never forget. And it includes a wide range of concerns, from the illegal takeover of the country to decades of terror, to the killing of our people and links to narcotics and terrorism. And to address all these core issues, we need to view all these problems holistically as a package, not as an isolated problem. And secondly, women's rights should not be confined to the reopening of schools and access to education, because that includes much more than that. And now let me share some of the efforts I have consistently undertaken in the past 3 years in my capacity as Afghanistan's ambassador. Fortunately, I have this platform, and I believe, at least personally, I believe that I have used this platform very well. Of course, it's not about me, it's a collective stance. And let me see that we women in the diaspora, whether diplomats in exile or active incumbent diplomats, as you wish to call it, we are a few, but we have explored every possible avenue. And we have left no stone unturned when it comes to raise our voices for our collective cause. Women's rights, equality, and justice. And on the as my mission is representing Afghanistan in international organizations, so on the multilateral efforts at my mission, we were closely work with various UN agencies such as UNODC, UNIDO, and international organizations like IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, and the Organization for Security and Cooperation Europe, OAC, and the International Anti-Corruption Academy. And many of these organizations are highly technical. They usually their work is very technical. still, I have used every opportunity to advocate for women's rights. And over the past years, I have delivered more than 30 statements in these forums speaking about gender apartheid and systemic oppressions of the Taliban. And I managed to draw attention to the plight of our girls and women. Of course, there is still room, it's not enough, but in a way I did it. And in particular at OSCE, where Russian diplomats have attempted to block my speeches many times. Isabella is here and she knows what I'm talking about. And I have received strong support from other nations, ensuring that my voice is heard. And I have also organized 4 high-level discussions focusing on the situation of women in Afghanistan, attended by parliamentarians, ambassadors, diplomats, experts, and leaders. And these platforms have enabled many women to come forward and to talk. Right now, I'm not naming them, but a few attended these forums and they shared their experiences, and we are proud that we managed to amplify their voices. And bilaterally, my mission also maintains a strong relationship with the parliament. I mean, the Austrian parliament, political parties, and civil society organizations. And for instance, on 3 occasions, we have successfully talked the Taliban's oppositions to the Austrian parliament. That was huge, but it was not publicized. And I think that was one of our significant milestones. And for your information, I have a meeting with the Justice Minister of Austria on October 17, and I will encourage her and her government that as a woman leader, take steps to join the initiative or to do at least some concrete actions. And let me just tell a few more sentences and then I conclude here. What can we do to advocate more for the recognition and codification of gender apartheid in Afghanistan in an international level? So here I noted some concepts. The first one is strategic patience. You know, Afghanistan is a war-torn country with complex and consistent failure and with many deep challenges, and change will not happen overnight. It is a process and we must approach it with strategic patience. And I understand the situation in Afghanistan, and we see the generation of our girls losing opportunities and they are deprived of their rights. But that is unfortunately the dark reality, that all the process takes time. And another thing about Afghanistan is the mash of the patriarchy. You know, the battle and struggle of our women didn't start in recent years after the Taliban. Our women began this journey decades ago, and we will continue. And it's not as though it will end with the Taliban. No, we are doing our part for today's generation, and the next will carry it forward. And the second thing is maintaining hope. I see that it was already mentioned. Although the return to 0 point after 20 years of democracy and rights is very unfortunate and heartbreaking. Hope remains key to progress, and we cannot afford to lose it. The third point I want to make is using the correct technology in this field. I want to clarify that I'm not an expert on gender apartheid or women's rights, or I'm not, I would say that I'm not an activist as well, but I just want to do and contribute with what our woman is doing. So therefore, I do not speak about the legal procedure. Fortunately, such a team has already been established, and they are working tirelessly to advocate the codification of gender apartheid in international conventions. But for those like myself who are advocating for gender apartheid recognition, it's crucial to understand the legal and social concepts we are advocating for. That's very important, including gender apartheid, segregation, and systemic oppressions. And I have noticed that we often misuse terms, which weakens our case on the international stage. For example, the situation in Afghanistan is unique. No other country denies women their basic rights to this extent. There are countries, but not to this extent. So while systemic gender segregation exists in places like Iran, for instance, but women there can still attend the schools, work, and participate in public life. And calling other countries' situation gender apartheid risks and watering down our argument, and that weakens the focus on Afghanistan, where true gender apartheid is in effect. I'm sure that everyone here knows what is gender apartheid. Gender apartheid refers to the systemic and institutionalized segregation and oppression of individuals based on gender. That severely limiting their freedoms, rights, and participation in the society. And the term is particularly fitting when discussing the Taliban's Afghanistan, where women are denied education, employment, healthcare, freedom of movement, and where violence are used to enforce these conditions. So recognizing the unique form of oppression in Afghanistan is essential for our advocacy. And by understanding that, we can understand the precise nature of gender apartheid, and that is how we can more effectively push for it and advocate for it. And the other point that I want to make is the importance of networking and solidarity between our women and girls and those who believe in equality and justice, including our men, girls, boys, to overcome gender oppression. So under the Taliban, women face extreme gender oppression, and during such a crisis, it's crucial for women to connect with each other and with the not only with each other, but to connect with global community to fight for their rights and to demand justice. Very important thing, dividing women and girls into categories, those inside the country, those outside, and the diaspora, those who work with the government, those not working with the government. All those is not a productive strategy. We should avoid such divisions, and actually that is very important for me, not to divide women. The global networks help to share women's stories of struggle and resilience with the world. We must use these networks because solidarity ensures that their voices reach international platforms, raising awareness and pushing governments to take actions, because human rights, is a universal matter. The universality of human rights declaration is the core, and we shouldn't forget that in our discussion, that we should always focus on universality of human rights declaration. By joining international platforms, women around the world, they can push for governments and international bodies to recognize gender apartheid in Afghanistan. First, when we used gender apartheid, there were some sensation on that about gender apartheid, but and sometimes I would say that still there is a resistance within the international community to the term gender apartheid, and it should not be overlooked. In some Islamic countries, there is a fear that codifying this might implicate them as well. There are many Islamic countries that they are hesitant to even talk about gender apartheid, and even in some developed countries, there are doubts about the term on several occasions, diplomats have declined to attend my events because the title included gender apartheid. They politely asked me to use another terms like gender persecution or gender oppression or systemic discrimination. However, I'm pleased that now we have managed, by we, I mean all women in different platforms, we have managed to reduce the sensation around the term in international platform. So for now, I stop here, then we continue later with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for explaining the situation and sharing your experience and efforts. And unfortunately, in Afghanistan, we have really a few female ambassadors, and female ambassadors mostly have more privilege to access to international platform. And we truly appreciate your effort and your talking about raising awareness about the situation of Afghanistan. Thank you so much. And now, finally, we have Ms. Farimana Wabi, who will talk about supporting and mobilizing Afghanistani women in diaspora, strategies for diplomats and also activists to address gender apartheid and navigate the current situation in Europe. Ms. Farimana, can you also explain about a little bit, women, Afghanistani women who arrived in Europe and have a lot of challenges, and despite of these challenges, they are fighting for their rights. If the floor is yours now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good day, everyone, wherever you are in the world. I'm sure we are scattered. And thank you so much, Ms. Haidari, for the opportunity and the organizations that arranged this event. It's truly a privilege and honor for me to share the platform with the ambassador and also with Ms. Akbar. I really cannot compare my work or what I do to them, because I'm doing a very tiny part, given my circumstances and situation. But I think it reminds me of that story of a little bird that the forest was on fire and all the animals rushed to the sea. But just one little bird took a drop from the sea and take it to the forest. So I'm doing that, comparing to other brave women of Afghanistan. I'm just doing my job. And I want to start this conversation with a personal story or a personal takeaway from my life. Back in the 90s, when Taliban took over Afghanistan, I was a teenager. I was in high school. And after 1 year, I was forced actually by my family to wear burqa or chadari. And that was really horrible. When the Taliban left in 2001, I didn't want to keep that burqa or chadari at home, because I was believing that it's a bad luck. It has a bad effect on my life and other women. So I just gave away that burqa, hoping that the next generations of Afghans will never experience this. But unfortunately, we went through this trauma, and now generations are coming to experience this. And I'm very sorry that in 21st century, still we're talking about equality. We're talking about women's rights, and it breaks my heart that why still we are trying to convince men, we're trying to convince the world politicians that we're humans, we're equal, and that's our right to be seen, to be heard, to have education. And talking about advocacy and human rights and being an advocate, I was not into this field because I started my career as a teacher at the Kabul University, and then I shifted to diplomacy. Similarly, I followed Ambassador Bakhtari's path, because I was also teaching at the Language and Literatures School of Kabul University. And then for some reasons, I decided to represent Afghanistan as a diplomat or as a civil servant at the Foreign Office. I never thought that sometime I have to become a human rights advocate. After the collapse of Afghanistan, I was serving as a diplomat in Sweden, where I'm located now. But I thought like diplomacy will not serve me as much as I want to do, because as ambassador said, I was not a senior diplomat, I was a junior diplomat, and I needed to do more, especially for human rights. I had to have some education in human rights. My field is international relations, strategy, security, language, but I never thought of studying human rights from the core and let's say basics of human rights. So that's why after the collapse, I moved to the southern part of Sweden. I studied human rights for 1 year at the university called Lund, which is very famous in Sweden for human rights and humanitarian law in Sweden. And then I started from a very simple way of advocacy, which was researching. I think Afghanistan always lacked proper research or proper researcher to dig into the problems that we had in Afghanistan. I'm very happy to see Ms. Akbar and other fellows are really doing a great job focusing or studying the challenges and the problems in Afghanistan. I think we lacked that in past 20 years, and I'm very glad that at least now there are plenty of organizations, and the one that I'm really proud is Rawadari, honestly speaking, not because of Ms. Akbar, but I'm really admiring the job they're doing. But at a personal capacity, I thought it's the time for me to start digging into these narratives that the Afghan society had created through years, especially under the umbrella of religion and culture. For me, as a young woman, I was always, I think someone's mic is on. So I started.
We can hear you. Can you unmute? Sorry.
Yeah, we can't hear.
Yeah, okay. I think there's a magic with my device. I hope there's not a ghost, because we in Afghanistan believe that the Friday night is a night that ghosts come. So I hope there's no ghost around me. So yes, to catch up with what I was saying, I thought it's a good time for me to use this opportunity and do some sort of research, question the interpretation of Islam in Afghanistan, question the cultural norms in Afghanistan, which I'm sorry to say, mainly suppress women, mainly suppress half of the society. So this was the tiny part, or this is actually the tiny part I'm still doing as a women's right advocate or human rights advocate. Plus, I dare to speak at different platforms as a former diplomat. Is that the connections I have from my background in diplomacy, is that the networks I have, and also the, let's say, skills I have, because I spent 12 years at the Foreign Office, and I have some skills to use it and build some networks in different platforms and do advocacy. And also, I do speak on media quite a lot for raising the awareness, but we cannot ignore, or we have to admit that after 2020, personally, I'm really astonished. I'm really excited to see the diversity of advocacy among Afghan women. And no one can ignore it. No one can keep a blind eye on it, starting from very high politicians to academics to ambassadors or diplomats to artists. Like, I'm really proud the work Ariana Saeed is doing as an artist. I never thought an artist would come forward and advocate for the rights of women, and also for those brave young girls inside Afghanistan that Ms. Akbar described, the way they do advocacy. They put their lives in risk, but still they take this risk and they do advocacy for their rights and for the rights of generations that we don't want them to experience what we are going to do or what we went through. So this diversity of advocacy is very beautiful for me, though it's not a good situation for us, but the strength, the resilience I see among Afghan women is unparalleled. I mean, the history of Afghanistan never witnessed this much diversity and also unity. Only in October, we had 3 very amazing events regarding Afghan women, one in Albania and then one at the European Parliament, and now this event in New York where approximately 20 countries are standing beside Afghan women. And I think I give the credit to all those brave Afghan women who dare to stand up for their rights and also for the rights of others. And honestly speaking, it's a war, it's a fight we do. We can just sit in our apartment in Europe and say, okay, I have my coffee, I have my apartment, I can do some sort of job, and why would I speak about women? But it's for me, it's an energy coming every day. Every morning I wake up, I just look around and see, okay, what can I do today for the women of Afghanistan? And for me, after August 2021, it's 24/7 job. I swear I don't stop. One day when I don't write anything, when I say anything, or when I don't just contact someone, I feel guilty. I feel like I haven't done enough today. And I'm really happy to see this vibe in every woman. Of course, it's not easy. It has never been easy. I do feel the pain that the women who left their homes, their identity, their jobs, all these women coming to Europe, US, or Canada, we had established lives back in Afghanistan. We worked hard for 20 years to establish our lives, but overnight we all became like ghosts. We never had assumed to become like this. I mean, personally, I have to go to, I'm living in Sweden, I have to learn Swedish, I have to prepare myself to be a proper citizen in Sweden or to be a part of Swedish society. It's not easy. I imagine myself to be a career diplomat, to serve Afghanistan through my diplomacy, but Taliban, for the second time, first time they took 5 years from my life. I went to school on Thursday, and then Friday they captured Kabul. On Saturday, we were not allowed to go to school, and I had to stay at home for 5 years. And then again, 2021, I went to the embassy the next day on Friday, and then Saturday, Monday, we went back and the government was gone, the country was collapsed, and that was a trauma. But still, I think, despite all these problems, all these challenges that we are going through in Europe, establishing our lives, settling down, becoming a part of European societies or America or Canada, still we keep the vibe very, very alive. Still we fight on daily basis. Let's say I'm lucky that I don't have children, but I cannot even imagine Ms. Akbar's life or Ms. Bakhtari's life with kids, with responsibilities, with jobs. Still, they stand for the rights of Afghan women. We take the challenges. I think Afghan women are way stronger than a normal human being, especially our generation that we were born after the invasion of Russians. We have gone through the invasion, we have gone through the civil war, we have gone through first time of Taliban, and now the second time. I think this is too much, way too much for a woman to suffer. But still, we stand up and we speak. And we speak about diversity, we speak about equality, we speak about women's rights, and we speak about the right that we're entitled as a human being. I feel very strong each time I talk about women's rights, and I'm sure every other Afghan woman feels the same way. And I'm hopeful this will change with all these recent changes that we see, the support we see. We have been, at some point, we have been hopeless, like why the international community is not listening to us. But as I mentioned, in October, we witnessed a green light, let's say, and I'm sure this will get stronger and bigger, because we Afghan women will not let anyone forget us. We will knock on every single door, and we will make people to hear our voice and decide about us, and change their policies towards Afghanistan, especially towards the Afghan women. Thank you. I'm gonna stop here, but looking forward to the question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nawawi, for sharing your insight, your personal experience. It was really touchable, you know. Every morning when you wake up and try to do something for women of Afghanistan, to talk about this, it was really, we really appreciate. And I guess all of Afghanistani women will do it the same. And yeah, thank you so much. So now we will move to the Q&A session of the webinar, and we will address your question according to the time we have. And this part will be managed by my colleague, Anubati. Yeah, Anubati.
Hi, everyone. It's so lovely to hear you all and be in this space with you all. It was so inspiring to listen to all of you. And I'm not Afghanistani, but it was so inspiring to see that women are such fighters, and it's so inspirational to be a part of this space. So we would love to take questions. If you do not want to, you can raise your hands to ask a question, or you can send your question in the chat box if you don't want to raise your questions. Yeah, we already have someone who's raising their hand. So should I? Yeah. Yes, please go on, Momina. Is that how you say your name? I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly.
Thank you very much. No, you correctly pronounced my name. Hello to everyone, and thank you for Shaharzad and our colleagues to organize this event and to provide the opportunity for the two diplomats and Ms. Akbar to say their views and their experiences regarding the situation of women, especially the gender apartheid in Afghanistan. So that was wonderful for me. Though I was busy in another meeting, but I came here, and my question is from the two diplomats is that fortunately good news came that nearly 30 countries approved or they accept that Taliban should be brought to justice in the International Criminal Court. This is really something very, very unexpected and amazing for the moment. But I have a bit worry about the backside of the policy, whether these policies are really very truly, rightly, and honestly, these countries are supporting women and bringing Taliban regarding the gender persecutions happening in Afghanistan to justice, or there is something behind the curtains that they are trying to recognize the Taliban's de facto government. This is really something very making a kind of worries among the people created that maybe it's a kind of tool, that diplomatic tool they are using to bring to raise the slogans to bring to justice Taliban regarding the gender persecution into basically the countries trying to provide the process of recognition for the de facto government of the Taliban. I would like to have the view of the diplomats regarding this issue, what they are saying about these things, whether these are true or this is a rumor. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. We would love if our speakers can take this over. And
shall I? So thank you so much, Madam Yeri, for your very good question. But I believe in my capacity, I'm not able to provide you with the comprehensive answer because honestly, I don't know. We were witnessed in the past 2 weeks that two major steps have been taken by European Parliament and by this 4 countries that we have already mentioned their names. I believe that these concrete actions are very important, at least politically is very important because it delivers a political message. However, we shouldn't put all of our hopes on those two approaches because, as I already said, Afghanistan is a mixture of problems and we cannot solve everything by this approach or by that approach. We need to put all efforts together to find the way and find the path. I believe that taking the case of violating the CEDAW in Afghanistan to the International Court of Justice is a prime example of that. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not sure if I provide you concrete and precise answers. But for the past 2-3 days, I'm reading as well about this. That is a court that takes battles between the governments. The concerns of our people are emerging from this point because that is between the governments and the Taliban. They are not a legitimate government and they are just a regime or a group of people. So how international community can take the Taliban as a government in this in front of this court. But the previous experiences and the previous history of this court shows that it doesn't matter if they are a legitimized, recognized government or not. So that is one thing that assures us that it will not lead to recognition. But as you know, honestly, without being very diplomatic, for the past years, I have lost my hopes from to put my hopes to international communities because we are betrayed. We are betrayed by international community. We are betrayed by our allies. So I mean, in conclusion, that these are good acts, concrete acts, but let's see how it goes. And the other thing is very lengthy. It's not that we can change the things in a day. It might take years and years. But of course, a united feminist movement can influence policies worldwide, ensuring that any international agreement with the Taliban is tied to protecting women's rights. And that is how we can make sure, at least that is our demand. And this movement can pressure governments to take stronger actions and offer supports directly to women. That's why before I was talking about connections, networking, and having links to the international community, because we need emotional and practical support as well. Solidarity isn't just about advocacy, it's about emotional and practical support as well. Global women's groups can offer our people, and in particular our girls and women, moral encouragement and practical help, such as safe spaces, access to education and healthcare, and the list goes on and on. So I give the floor to Madam Nawabi. She might have better answers than what I presented. So thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. No, I don't dare to add more because I'm not personally an international law lawyer. And from what the only thing I can add is, yeah, it's we must not ignore that it's the result of the efforts of Afghan women. At least Ambassador and I know that a huge number of women have been doing this advocacy for almost 3 years. The accountability mechanisms was one of the main agenda point for all Afghan women, including the Richard Bennett, the human rights rapporteur, that we all pushed for that. And I'm very happy that the first step is taken. Yeah, as Ambassador mentioned, it's a lengthy process. We shouldn't be hopeless, we shouldn't be tired, but it takes time. The good news is the first step is taken, and we are behind that, and we are pushing for the result.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Shaharzad, can I say something?
Yes, of course, but
yeah, thank you for the wonderful explanation and elaboration by the Excellency Ambassador and our other excellent diplomats. Definitely, it is a long process, but what was really a point of worry for me is a women, because as we should not really lose our courage, we should not feel tired. We should continue our struggle. This is very, very important. As Ms. Nawabi said, for the last 3 years, and Excellency Ambassador, that we did the efforts, all the women, in any step, even in an individual, took a strong steps, was very useful during last 3 years. But definitely the point of worry for me, it is really a wonderful in the history of the court, I think. And Afghanistan is the first country that by the Convention on Elimination of All Kinds of Discrimination Against Women is bring to justice for the gender persecution. So that is really, really a good news. We should really appreciate that. And this is I really agree with Nawabi that Richard Bennett did a lots of efforts besides Afghan women. But really, this is the point. We should not lose our courage. We should be hopeful, really. But the point of worry is that really there should not be a diplomacy for the recognition of the Taliban. And of course, it should not be affected by that diplomacy. What I mean is that, but I'm also hopeful that it will happen, but it's time consuming. Thank you. Thank you for this, for both of the Excellency Ambassador and Madam Nawabi as well.
Thank you so much for asking such a question. We would take. Yes, we see a few raised hands, so please feel free to go on.
Just I want to add something, dear Madam Yeri. Honestly, I share the concern with you. We have concerns because we have already been betrayed, so we all have our doubts, and we shouldn't trust without realizing, without studying, and without being very careful about everything. But as far as I see the situation, I see that many countries hesitate to engage with the Taliban because they fear that doing so would legitimize the regime and a regime that violates human rights, especially women's rights. After issuing the Voice and Virtue Law, just a month ago, many countries, even those who are traditionally advocating for the Taliban, they are kind of silent, because with that law, with that systemic oppression, how they can defend and justify the actions of the Taliban. So, I mean, at least we have this leverage for now, and I see that the Taliban's severe restrictions on women's rights, including bans on education and employment, ban on almost everything, have caused international isolation for the Taliban as well. And engaging with such a repressive regime becomes difficult for foreign governments and institutions to justify. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yes, somebody has raised their hands. Please feel free to go on.
Okay, then I will go. So hello everyone. Sorry, I have a problem with the light here. So my name is Graziella Piga. I'm a gender specialist. I've been working for over 25 years on gender issues and also following Afghanistan. I'm really pleased to be here today and to listen to all these speakers. And I was just reflecting, it's just more a reflection than a question, and then maybe there is also a question. So, I mean, I worked for the UN, I worked for the OSCE, and I'm actually a bit disappointed, you know, but what is going on? I see like a lot of speeches happening, but like during these 3 years, apart from the last year, very little has actually happened, you know, to really help Afghan women and all this engagement with the Taliban. I understand from the diplomatic point of view, perhaps there is a need, but then to what extent then we are legitimizing their, you know, their regime. So far a lot has happened like in very small circles, you know, there are like people like us who are interested in, you know, in gender equality, in women's rights, and we are active, we are getting interested. And then there is like all the people working for international organizations. But I was wondering, about actions that could actually engage more like the average population, about maybe a global day, you know, where, you know, all the activists working on women's rights, on rights for Afghan women could actually organize a demonstration in every city globally, basically, something we could agree on. I mean, I'm just, maybe it's just like, it's a huge thing to do, I understand. The task is almost overwhelming, but I'm just thinking, you know, how to bring Afghan women's rights to the average person. Because, I mean, the majority of the people around me don't even know what is happening. Yes, they heard something. They don't even, they can't even locate Afghanistan geographically. And I feel that the conversation remains always like in the realm of the like few specialized activist people. So how to bring the issue to the global population to push our governments, basically. I'm Italian and I live in France. And I worked a lot also in Central Asia. I was based in Tajikistan for 4 years. And I worked with Afghan women a lot when I was working for the UN. So the question is for everybody.
The first time, I think you go ahead and then I will follow.
سافر شو صدایت نمیشنیم ببخش. Sorry, we can't hear you.
Sorry, that is the technology. So I make mute and then I forget about it anyway. So thank you so much for your point of view, and I'm glad that a colleague from OSCE is here. So you know what I'm echoing here. At OSCE, Afghanistan is a partner, not a participant countries. So there are 10, I believe 10 or 11 partners for cooperation, and Afghanistan is one of them. And unfortunately, we are not the participant countries. And since we are not the participants countries, we do not share the same level of rights there. That's why you don't see Afghanistan subject at the OSCE a lot. But anyway, as Asian partners, we have yearly or annual conferences that for the past years I have had the pleasure to organize those conferences. Let me give you an example. Like yesterday, I was at the OSCE from morning until evening, and it was the PC, the Permanent Council meeting. Since morning until the end of, almost until the end of the event, everyone was talking about Ukraine and Russian invasion to Ukraine, and all the subjects were focusing on that. And of course, Afghanistan is a forgotten subject, not only at the OSCE, but in many other platforms. I always try to make it work, although I don't have the space, but I try to make it work. So at the end of this PC yesterday, I had the opportunity to encourage other nations to join the initiative led by 4 countries. And as you may know, the director of the Dushanbe Staff College reported on the threats emerging from Afghanistan to Tajikistan and beyond. And that was another thing that I believe I had a lot to say, but unfortunately I didn't register for a statement there. I mean, like in international platforms in Vienna, the space for practicing our rights is very limited, as I already mentioned, because it's very technical. It's very technical. When participants talking about, let's say, clean energy or about atomic energy, so it's really difficult for me to include women's agenda there and Afghanistan's agenda there, but I do in my capacity as much as I can do. I mean, we should use every opportunities here and there to raise our voice. You know, let me emphasize that we, each of us, we have a role to play, and it doesn't have to be the same. It's referring to Madam Nawabi's comment. So I mean, like one can write and one can sing like Ariana Saeed to raise the voice for the women of Afghanistan. Another delivers speeches, and someone else documenting the abuses, and another protest in the streets. And every step and every effort counts, and every steps in international platform as well counts.
Thank you so much. Like, I completely agree with you. And we have a few questions, like quite a few questions that we would love for you to answer and for everyone else to answer. So the first question is from Samira, and they have asked that, are there specific women's movements that you can name, or anybody in our group can name, that we can follow in Afghanistan on social media? How can we support women's movement in Afghanistan directly? Some videos that come out of Afghanistan are in Farsi, but not everyone knows Farsi as well or at all. So how can people support the women's movement directly when there is a language barrier sometimes?
I can take on that if I may. Well, after the collapse, I think there are a huge number of movements. Let's say we call them groups, but you can label them movements. At least I'm a member of a few of them. One is called Together is Stronger, which is a coalition of 100+ women. Other is Afghan Women Leader Forum, and the other is Afghan Women Coalition for Change. And the recent one, which was organized, an event which was organized by the organization called Women for Afghanistan, and also many other I can name. And the good thing is we all have, or they all have, social media platforms, including LinkedIn and also X platform. They can follow them. We post our activities regularly there, and there are plenty of groups from inside Afghanistan as well. I don't exactly refer to any of them because they have their problems of security from inside Afghanistan, but you can follow them on social and media, especially Afghanistan International, which quite often echo their voices through their news bulletins. But the main ones, you can definitely go to X, and also, which is the previous Twitter, LinkedIn, and they have, mainly we have the activities in Farsi, Pashto, and English. The good news is they can access these platforms in different languages, and it's not a problem, especially nowadays with the mobile phones and also with the translation and AI. Things are way easier to understand and to follow. But do follow the Afghan women movements and groups on different platforms, and you can see how colorful and how vibrant these movements are.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think with this current generation, it's very much easy to translate things very quickly. Someone has raised their hands. Before we get into that, we will ask a few more questions that are in the chat box. So someone has asked, how can we engage men and religious communities more effectively in the diaspora's efforts to advocate against gender apartheid?
So first, I think it's a $1 million question. You go ahead and answer it.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's a $1 million question. First, let me start from this point that, as Madam Nawabi said, there are several movements both within and outside Afghanistan, and each of them, they are using different approaches to address the situation. However, there's so many, and I'm in contact with many of them, but however, we need a larger network to come together. You know that our unity is our strength. That should be one sentence that we should write it down and just put it in front of us, because our unity is our strength. And furthermore, civil society, NGOs, and women rights groups in Afghanistan and outside of Afghanistan, they must connect and they must unite to build some efforts against the current situation in Afghanistan and against gender apartheid. And I believe through this collective work, we can shape policies, or at least we can shift those policies right now or currently on the table of policymakers, and to uplift the voices of the girls and women of Afghanistan that unfortunately, or who have unfortunately been forced to be silenced for too long. And to answer that question, to how to manage to encourage men to join our collective cause and stand with the women of Afghanistan. I'm not denying the fact that there are several main groups and individuals who are believing in democracy, human rights, and women's rights, and they are trying to use their platforms for the sake of our girls and women. But unfortunately, this is very limited, and many in Afghanistan and even outside of Afghanistan, they are not accompanying women's rights advocate. They have their own reasons. Well, some argue that they are in Afghanistan and they cannot stand against an oppressive regime, because then they will be taken to the jails, to prosecution, and to other kind of stigma. That is, I can understand that one, but let me point out that if there is a subject like Palestine or something in Afghanistan, then all men will go to the streets and they are shouting. But when it comes to their daughters' education, then they are just silent. Because why? Because Afghanistan is a patriarchal country, and many believe that the women's and girls' education and employment are not as important as security. You see, that is the thing. And getting the attention of clerics and religious society is even more difficult. But I'm happy that there are a few clerics, a few Islamic scholars who are advocating for the women's rights, and they are trying to tell the Taliban that that is not the right version of Islam that you are practicing. But that is really difficult. And actually, that is one of my main concerns, how we can unite together regardless of our gender. I strongly believe that if all families, all men in Afghanistan stand and request for their daughters' education, then no one can erase them, because that will be a mass and collection effort. And right now, we don't have that. I had the privilege to attend Albania's conference just 2 weeks ago in September, still in September. And I met several women who came from Afghanistan. And one of the heartbreaking things I was told was like, right now in Afghanistan, there is a culture of impunity, and there is a culture of a culture against women. Even a 10 years old boy on the street allows himself to insult a woman for no reason. Even a shopkeeper allows himself to insult a woman. And the woman told me that if we just argue about like very basic things, that like the vegetarian is not fresh, can you give me that part? And then the shopkeeper says that, oh, khala, it's khala, just go. If you argue more with me, then I will call the Taliban. So you see, this is the culture right now in Afghanistan. And I'm really concerned about the next generation of extremists, about the next generation of fundamentalists, next generations of those who are not respecting the fundamental rights of everyone, including women in Afghanistan. And that is the cultural aspects of Taliban's presence in Afghanistan.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on that. It is truly so tragic to see that how drastically the cultural aspect has changed in Afghanistan, and how people are seeing things a lot differently, and how it has become more rigid for people. And we have another question from one of our participants they have two questions, but one of the questions is, what particular strategies, for example, base building, disruptive movements, protest, narrative shift, and so on, are Afghan activists in diaspora employing to demand or influence host country disengagement with the Taliban? Are there certain strategies that have proven to be more effective than others? So please feel free to answer this question.
I can go ahead with my experience, and also the experience of other women that I am in contact with. So there is no one strategy for the advocacy or for the promoting what we do. As I mentioned before, it has different levels, different layers. We all do it at our own capacity. For instance, we see a woman going to different parliaments in different countries. We see women going to media, sitting down and talking. We see women protesting on the streets, especially in Germany. I see a lot in London, in Sweden, where I live. We see women diplomats like the ambassador. She's doing it in her capacity. And also we see a large number of academics, very young girls. They are doing researches. They are taking seminars in the universities that they study. We see a large number of women in legal system that they are working on their capacity. As we spoke about the Afghanistan case and ICJ, I see a large number of women who has the knowledge of international law, and they're taking it their way. So each one of us doing based on our experience, based on our skills, and based on our ability. So we each build our own strategy. There is no one way, there's no one strategy I can mention that, okay, this is what we do. It's very diverse. It's from networking to writing to speaking, to doing diplomacy, to sitting down with politicians and talking to them. It's very diverse. Each one of us create our own strategy. And as I mentioned, we almost all of us were not advocates. Personally, I never had the deep knowledge of human rights, but I had to study. I had to go to school again. I had to sit in a class for 1 year to learn how should I do it? What do I need to do? So each one of us have our own way, and especially the ways that's possible and the ways that are effective. And through this way, we build our strategies. We find our ways through challenges and sometimes through opportunities. So for me, based on my experience, I create my own strategies. I don't have any written down the strategy to go with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for answering the question. We're already running a little late because we had quite a few questions, but somebody had raised their hand. So please feel free to go on, Rehana, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have got my screen just to check if Bono Akbar is there. Okay, so I have got a question from Ms. Shaharzad Akbar. She said about conducting some movements, and also, if I heard correctly, for girls, they have got something by the name of Iqra, and also you said, Mrs. Akbar, about Quran and Islamic rules. So my question is this: have you got in your team people, they are well educated about Quran and religion, that they just say about the how it is relevant gender apartheid in Quran and Islam? And also another question from anyone who respond me. What type of government do you believe would be best to ensure that women's rights are protected and fulfilled in Afghanistan? Thank you.
Thank you, Rehana Jan. Ms. Shaharzad, unfortunately, due to some urgent matter, she left the meeting, and we don't have her. But for your next question, I guess we have two speakers, and if they want to address them. Thank you.
I will go very short, and then the ambassador knows how to answer. For me, a government run by women would be the best for Afghanistan.
Yeah, that is very true, and I welcome that. So for the first question, of course, Ms. Shaharzad is not here to answer you, and I'm not the expert to provide you with the answer. But for the second part, I believe the form of government does not matter. You can have democracy within the monarchy, within the parliamentarian system, within the centralized system, within the uncentralized system. So it's not the form of the government. It is the will of the politicians. And it is the system, how they build the system, because building a system should ensure the rights of everyone in the country, every individual, every citizen, despite of their gender, their race, their language, their cultural ties, or whatsoever. I mean, like, honestly, it's not that sort of structure or a government that can ensure only by structure to uphold women's rights. It is about believing in democracy, believing in women's rights, and believing in women's power, in women's ability. You know, let me give you an example. For the past 20 years, we had a democratic system with a Democrat government, and many of our women, they had the space to exercise their rights, from the parliament to the government, from the civil society to other organizations, and we have seen a huge wave of empowerment towards women. But what was the problem? So then, because we had the best law, the constitution, and other regulations. So what was the problem? Whether everyone honestly believed in women's rights there, even those who were working with the government, no. not everyone believed in women's empowerment, in women's ability. They were giving the chance only because international community and because the circumstances required so, not because they believed in. Actually, that has been happening in Afghanistan's history for very long. But anyway, to ensure that the resources and the opportunities are provided for every individual in the country, I believe an uncentralized government might be better, but that is a huge question to answer. I mean, like that belongs to the people of Afghanistan. When we have our geography back, when we have our country back, then our people might come together and discuss and decide about this big aspects of Afghanistan. And let me just briefly bring another subject here. You know that we are witnessing a backlash in many countries against the advances made in women's rights, not only in Afghanistan, it's kind of worldwide. Believe me, when I have some talks with women in international platforms, they are complaining about that as well. And that is kind of a wave after as per some people against the women's rights, feminists came to the, the feminists who put their feet on the ground and they have a say to decide about the politics, about everything, every aspects of the life. Now we see that backlash is everywhere, and women throughout the world continue to face this discrimination. They are denied equal access to participation in public and political life, and many suffer sexual and gender-based violence and abuse. So that is not only relevant to Afghanistan. In many countries, we are witnessing this situation, but Afghanistan's case is one of those extreme that I believe that the contemporary history of the world has not seen such a thing.
Thank you so much for answering that question so very well. We have another final question. And it is quite a long one, and it is for actually Manizha, for you actually. And it says that if I heard the second presenter correctly, my connection was cutting in and out. The term gender apartheid in Afghanistan is being watered down by using the term in settings where it doesn't strictly apply. But perhaps that is also because isolation for this cause, I believe that in almost every country, due to increasing refugee and marginalization populations, there is a subpopulation of women facing what can truly be considered gender apartheid. Isn't there a way to use this unfortunate common ground as a way to build resistance to gender apartheid instead of considering it watering down the movement? And they also added, if I misunderstood the presenter, please disregard. So please feel free to answer this question.
So I would briefly answer this question. I believe that every term and every concept have roots and have its own logic, and we cannot replace them. Although I acknowledge that there are discrimination against women, against marginalized groups around the world, against refugees, and there are so many marginalized groups around the world, here, there, in that country, on that country. But every dilemma and every phenomenon in this world has its own criteria and has its own concept. So that is why I'm saying that we shouldn't misuse the terms, and we cannot use the term of gender apartheid over there, because that is concentrating on gender, because it's a segregation and discrimination based on gender, not based on because you're a refugee, or not based that you're poor or you're rich. It is because of your gender. So that is why I'm very cautious about this term.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much for answering that question. This is it for our questions for our Q&A session. I would give the floor to Shahar so that she can take over.
Thank you, Anubhuti. I'd like to take time to thank you again for your presence. We also extend our heartfelt gratitude to our respected speakers today, Shaharzad Akbar, Ambassador Manizha Bakhtari, and Farimona Awabi, who enlightened our thoughts with their experience on the diaspora activism of Afghanistan, women of Afghanistan, and their challenges, the path to justice, and also strategies for the fight. We appreciate everyone who contribute to this program, and I'd like to encourage all participants to check our website, our manifesto, which my colleague already shared in the chat. Please consider signing our petition and supporting us in spreading this important information. And additionally, don't forget to follow us on our social media and subscribe our monthly newsletter for updates. If you have any question or need further information, feel free to reach out to us. And thank you so much. If you don't have Nawabi and Bakhtari Sahib, if you don't have any other things to add, we can say goodbye to our participants.
Just thank you. Thank you so much for you, and a huge thank to those who listen to it. Thank you.
Yeah, indeed. I thank you and extend my gratitude to you and all those who are trying to use their platforms to advance women's rights in Afghanistan and to uphold the voices of women, because we need to amplify the voices, and the voices not only be told, but to be heard and to be seen. And we need that we need to make sure that, and your platform is one of those, and we are really happy and honored to be part of this program, and I wish you more success in your endeavor.
Thank you so much. Anubhuti? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm just in awe of like this whole space, that it feels so powerful as a woman, especially to be in such a space where I see fellow women and their journey and them resisting in their own unique ways. So I'm really very grateful to be a part of this, and thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you so much for being here. It was lovely seeing and listening to all of you. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a nice day.